I'm Jessica, 28 years old. I started dating my husband through a friend's introduction, and we got married a year later. At first, I thought he was just an ordinary guy, neither particularly good nor bad. But about 3 months into our marriage, his flaws started to stand out, and I deeply felt that I had made a mistake by marrying him. The first flaw, my husband can't make decisions, and always consults mother-in-law or sister-in-law when in doubt. The second flaw, he has no sense of money management and spends everything he has. The third flaw, he does nothing at home, absolutely nothing. The list of his flaws seemed endless. I knew I was also at fault for not noticing his flaws before getting married. Looking back, I wonder why I didn't notice them. I probably didn't want to miss out on getting married, so I must have unconsciously turned a blind eye to his faults. There was one more crucial thing among his flaws that I shouldn't forget. It was the presence of his sister, Donna, who was extremely stingy with money, a real penny pincher. Donna, still single, lives with mother-in-law. Our house is about a 3-minute walk from my husband's family home, and Donna would frequently come over for no reason, lounge on our couch watching TV, and make endless demands like wanting coffee or pizza. I found it annoying, as I couldn't clean the room, and responding to her demands was bothersome, but I couldn't ask her to leave or not to come so often. Sometimes when Donna came to my house, I had to go shopping. Then she would always come with me. Once in the grocery store, she'd use her own cart to shop extensively, and at the checkout she'd smile and say to me, "Sorry, Jessica, I don't have enough money on me right now. Can you pay for me? I'll bring the money tomorrow, promise." We had shopped together many times, but Donna never had money and never brought it the next day as she promised. One day, I said to Donna, "Donna, I don't want to say this, but please pay for your own shopping." Donna replied with an embarrassed smile, "Oops, sorry, I forgot my wallet again today. I'll definitely pay you back tomorrow, please." Of course, Donna never paid me back the next day either. I consulted my husband. "I'd like you to casually mention this to Donna."
"Don't make a big deal of her grocery money. Donna is single and lonely. Just let it slide."
"It's not about a small amount. She always shops in huge quantities, and it's every week."
"So, don't make a deal out of paying for groceries. Besides, we'll keep using your money from now on. Got it?"
I felt a sense of helplessness at my husband's words and never brought up the subject of paying for sister-in-law's expenses again. One morning, sister-in-law came to my house with a big smile, but I had a bad feeling. Sure enough, sister-in-law started saying something outrageous. "Last week, I had a dinner party with some friends after a long time, and we've decided to go on a trip next month. So, Jessica, are you coming with us?" Sister-in-law said this knowing full well that there was no way I would go. "I'll pass, as I don't know anyone else." As if she'd been waiting for that response, sister-in-law eagerly said, "Oh, that's a shame. Well then, Jessica, can you cover the trip costs? It's just for one person since you're not going, so it's not a big amount." I was so stunned that I couldn't speak. Why should I have to pay for sister-in-law's trip? Seeing that I wasn't saying anything, sister-in-law said, "What's the matter, Jessica? Do you want to go after all? If you do want to come, I'm afraid you'll have to pay for 3 people." "Why would it be for 3 people?" "Jessica, because you can afford it." Hearing those words, I was even more dumbfounded and started feeling sick. "Donna, I'm not feeling well today, so I'm going to rest." "Oh dear, take it easy, but don't forget about the payment." About that." I wanted to say that I couldn't do it, but before I could finish, sister-in-law had left. That night when my husband came home from work, I told him about sister-in-law's outrageous request, and he laughed and said,
"Ha ha ha! Donna sure knows how to make bold requests."
"Can you turn her down for me, Sheldon?" The moment I said that, my husband glared at me and said,
"You're the one who got the request from Donna, so you deal with it."
"She won't listen to anything I say. That's why I'm asking you, Sheldon."
"Stop it. Don't bring me these annoying issues. Just pay it without complaining.
I felt ashamed for having consulted my husband. In the end, I agreed to only cover the cost for sister-in-law's portion of the trip. Why only for one person? I said for 3 people. I will pay for your part, but there's no need for me to pay for strangers. Upon hearing that, sister-in-law clearly looked displeased and said to me, I'll let it go this time, but you won't do this again, right? I didn't answer sister-in-law's question. Jessica, why are you ignoring me and not responding? That attitude isn't good. Reflect on it. Sister-in-law left after telling me this in a clearly angry tone. The following month, after sister-in-law's trip was over, my husband and I were invited to his parents' house, so we decided to visit on Sunday before noon. When we arrived, sister-in-law was already waiting for us at the dining table. Sheldon, Jessica, welcome. I've prepared Sheldon's favorite. Sheldon, I bought you a souvenir.
Thanks, Donna. I wonder what you got me.
You'll see when you open it.
I can't wait.
This is for you, Jessica. Sister-in-law handed me a piece of paper. The piece of paper was a bill stating, karaoke set repair cost $1,000. What is this? On the night of the trip, I got drunk and accidentally broke the karaoke set. I understand that, but why do I have to pay for the repairs? Jessica, you didn't go on the trip, so you didn't spend any money, right? So think of it as if you joined us, and please cover the repair costs. Jessica, please do this favor for me.
Yeah, it would be good for you to pay it.
I wanted to run away from there. This was an absurd and unreasonable demand. I can't accept this. I don't want to pay this kind of money. Huh? I figured you'd say something like that, Jessica.
Jessica, when will you learn the rules of my house?
I don't know any such rule. I was crying as I said this. I ran out of my husband's family home, returned to my own house alone, and cried in bed for a long time. My husband didn't come home that day, so it seemed he stayed at his family's house. The word divorce crossed my mind. The next morning, my husband went to work from his family's house and came back home late at night.
You'll always be a child.
My husband said this to me without even looking at my face. What part of me is a child?
Obviously, all of you. You married me. Don't forget that.
After saying that, he quickly went to take a bath and then went to sleep. I had begun to think that someday I wanted to get back at my husband, mother-in-law, and sister-in-law. Early the next morning, the phone rang, and the caller was my mother. I had a bad feeling. My mother had never called so early in the morning before. Mom, what happened? Jessica, Dad is in critical condition. My mother was crying. My father had been suffering from a lung condition and had been in and out of the hospital, and he was hospitalized at the time. What, Mom? You're at the hospital, right? I'm heading there right now. I quickly got ready and rushed to the hospital, meeting my exhausted mother in my father's room. The doctor was there, but when he saw me, he said,
I think his time is near. Please talk to him one last time.
I held my father's hand and spoke to him. Dad, it's me. Hang in there. Then my father squeezed my hand back with the little strength he had. Dad, you understand me, right? Get better soon so we can eat sushi together again. My father tried to slightly open his closed eyes, and tears were overflowing from them. My mother also held my father's hand and said through her tears, Hang in there. Don't leave me alone. At that moment, the medical equipment connected to my father made a noticeably loud noise. The doctor checked on my father and then informed us that he had passed away. My mother and I burst into tears. The doctors and nurses left the room, leaving us alone. A week had passed since my father's death. During that time, I'd been staying at my parents' house and was able to successfully complete the funeral. But once the tension had been lifted, I was overwhelmed with sadness as I truly realized that my father was gone. By the way, my husband briefly attended the funeral, but there was no sign of mother-in-law or sister-in-law. I had really wanted to stay here longer, but I decided to return to my husband's home the next day. That night, my mom spoke to me. "Jessica, there's a letter for you from Dad." I took the letter from my mom. It asked me to take good care of my mother and mentioned that the land my father owned would be transferred to my name. "Dad wanted to give that land to you, Jessica." "I had no idea. He wanted to make sure you'd be okay if anything happened." Hearing those words, sadness welled up inside me again, and I buried my face in my mom's chest, crying. Mom held me without saying a word. The next day I went home, but my husband didn't say anything when he saw my face. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law spoke when they saw me. "Oh, it's been a while. Did you go on a trip or something?" "No, Mom. She was just taking a break at her parents' house. Right, Jessica?" Both of them, of course, knew about my father's passing. Despite this, their words had no trace of kindness. I didn't respond, realizing how futile it would be to argue. About a month had passed since my father's death. I had some errands at my parents' house and was driving there. On the way, I passed the land from my father and noticed a sign had been put up. I couldn't read the sign while driving, so I stopped the car to take a look. I was shocked when I saw what it said. It was a sign seeking tenants for a parking lot, and what's more, the contact information listed was my sister-in-law's name and phone number. I stared at the sign for a while, then snapped back to reality and took a picture with my phone. Then I called my mom. "Mom, have you heard anything from Sheldon's sister about the land Dad gave me?" "Sister? You mean Donna?" "No, I haven't heard anything. What's going on?" "I'm in front of the land right now, and it's been turned into a parking lot with Donna as the contact." "What? That's outrageous." I wouldn't put it past her. "I was planning to go to your house, Mom, but I'll cancel that. I'll go talk to Donna now." "Dad must be furious up in heaven." "It's okay. It's my land." I turned the car around and headed to my husband's family home. Sister-in-law and mother-in-law were having coffee when I arrived. "Stephanie and Donna, I'm sorry to interrupt your coffee, but I have something to ask." "Oh, what is it? Can't it wait?" "I have something I need to ask Donna right now." "What is it?" "It's about the land I inherited from my father." With that, sister-in-law laughed. "Oh, that? It was a waste to leave it unused, so I turned it into a parking lot." "Why would you do something like that without telling me?" "You were neglecting that land. Is there something wrong with using it effectively?" "I understand wanting to use it effectively, but it's strange not to tell me anything. It's my land, so shouldn't you have spoken to me first?" Then mother-in-law interjected. "What are you to this house?" "I'm Sheldon's wife, so I'm your daughter-in-law." "That's right." I felt frustrated with mother-in-law's tone. "So what?" Then mother-in-law chimed in with an excited tone. "Daughter-in-law's land is our family's land. If you interfere, we'll sue." I lost my cool at that remark and responded, "Don't talk nonsense. If you want to sue, go ahead." "Well, I'm shocked. Such a terrible way to speak. Your parents must have raised you poorly." "Just remember, I won't care if you regret this later." I said that to my mother-in-law and left my husband's family home to return to my own house. That night, when my husband came home from work, he said to me with a flushed face, "Hey, it seems like you said something awful to Mom. She's angry." My husband already knew about the argument I had with mother-in-law and the others today. Mother-in-law must have called him and exaggerated the story. "It's Donna who's awful. She turned my land into a parking lot without asking me." "So what? Did it harm you in any way?"
No, but it's wrong not to tell me about it. I don't think it's wrong. You're my wife, so your land is our family's land. My husband echoed mother-in-law's words. Besides, how does Donna know I inherited that land? I told her. Why did you know? I saw the inheritance documents on your desk, and I mentioned the land. So you looked at my documents without permission? We're married, aren't we? Convenient how we're only married when it suits you. Tears streamed down my face as I spoke. Enough. If you don't like my family so much, leave, right now. Fine, I'll leave. I retorted to my husband's words and left the house. But I didn't regret it at all and felt relieved once I left. I went back to my parents' house and my mom said, I knew you'd come back. I had a feeling this would happen after your call this morning. It's too much, isn't it? Stephanie's saying, daughter-in-law's land is our family's land. We'll sue if you interfere. Sue for what, I wonder? You haven't done anything wrong. I'm so frustrated. What should I do? My mom thought for a moment and then said, If they're talking about suing, you should sue too. I'll contact Dad's lawyer friend for you. A few days later, my mom and I met with a lawyer named Kevin, who was a friend of my father's, and I told him about how sister-in-law had turned my land into a parking lot without permission. The lawyer laughed and said, Ha, it's your land, so there's no problem. I'll talk to them first, and if they don't understand, we'll formally sue. The following week, the lawyer and I visited my husband's family home after giving them a heads up. My husband, mother-in-law, and sister-in-law were all there waiting. The lawyer explained to the three of them that sister-in-law's actions were extremely malicious, incorporating legal interpretations. However, sister-in-law seemed unconvinced and shouted, It's daughter-in-law's land. Isn't daughter-in-law's land our family land? Legally, there's no such interpretation. I don't want to hear about complicated legal talk. You may be a smart lawyer, but you seem to lack common sense. Sister-in-law was giving the lawyer, who was about her parents' age, a piece of her mind. The lawyer calmly said, If you continue to use the land without permission, it can lead to serious legal consequences. What a cheeky man! The husband had a serious expression on his face after listening to the lawyer. He probably realized they were going to lose. Sheldon, what do we do? Do we sue? I can file a lawsuit if you want. The husband said with a slightly flustered expression. Let's not do that. Sheldon, why are you being so timid? Mom, it's no use, no matter how you look at it. We'd lose in court. Sheldon, but... The husband cut off sister-in-law's words. Donna, be quiet. Give me a moment. What are you going to do? I get it. We were wrong. We won't sue. Mother-in-law and sister-in-law were dumbfounded at his words. That's a wise decision. Then please remove the sign from that parking lot immediately. That's not a big deal. I'll give you half of the parking lot rent. Upon hearing this, the lawyer said to sister-in-law, The parking lot is Jessica's land, so you have no right to collect rent. That's right. It's my land. Please remove it immediately. Okay, I'll remove it. Just removing the sign won't be enough. There are already several cars parked there, right? Cancel those contracts as well. It might cause some trouble, but do your best. How cruel. Who's being cruel here? So, we're good with you not suing, right? Well, let me think. Yes, I'd like to see some sincerity from all three of you. What do you mean by sincerity? I'm not threatening you. I just want a heartfelt apology. What should we do? You can think about that yourself. You're a scary one. All right, I get it. With that, the husband offered a profound apology. He also motioned for mother-in-law and sister-in-law to apologize deeply, while he hung his head. Mother-in-law apologized tearfully, but sister-in-law had a discontented look on her face. I said, Donna's apology isn't sincere. An apology like that means nothing. Donna apologized properly. After being told by my husband, sister-in-law reluctantly apologized politely.
Seeing this, I felt that my revenge on these people was complete. Fine, I understand. Also, I won't be coming here ever again. I headed back with the lawyer. I had the lawyer inform my husband that he would proceed with the divorce. The lawyer said, "Jessica, that was impressive. It might have been a bit over the top, but it probably served as a good lesson for those three." "Indeed, thank you so much." "This is the end. Jessica, please be very happy from now on." "Thank you, I'll definitely be happy." About a month later, the divorce proceedings were completed smoothly, and I was to receive compensation. One day, when I went to check on my land, I saw that the sign had been removed and there were no cars parked, which gave me relief. Another month passed, and I remembered that my graduation album was still at my ex-husband's house. Reluctantly, I called my ex-husband and told him I would come to pick it up, only to be told something surprising. "You can come and get it, but we don't live in that house anymore. We're in an apartment nearby, and I'm not sure if all your stuff is there, but I packed it in a box for you." My ex-husband's voice lacked its usual energy, and was clear that he was not well. The next day I visited the apartment that my ex-husband had told me about, and when I knocked on the door, a haggard man, who looked like a completely different person, came out and said to me, "Here's the box. Take it." "You look worn out." "Yeah, a lot has happened." "What happened?" "I was told to leave by the landlord of the parking lot. The tenant likes to cause trouble, and it ended up in a legal mess." "Oh dear." "In the end, I lost and had to pay an enormous amount." "It can't be helped if you lost." "I tried to win the money back they made me pay by gambling, but instead I lost everything and ended up like this." "You can't expect to make money that easily with gambling. You're being naive." Even when I said this, he didn't get angry as he used to. He just hung his head in low spirits. "What about Stephanie and Donna?" "Both of them are working part-time jobs. After my day job ends, I also go to work as a night security guard." My ex-husband said this with a lonely smile on his face. Inwardly, I thought that they had received their just desserts.
My family and I, we are really close-knit. So much so that we try to go on vacation together at least 2 to 3 times a year. And if someone is unable to join us, we make sure to bring them back a souvenir. My name's Ginny. I'm 27, and I live with my family. My dad is usually away due to his busy work schedule. My sister is married and has moved out, so it's usually just my mom and grandfather at home. Lately, though, there's something off about my sister. Even when she visits, she often seems down. "What's wrong, sis? You seem off these days." "Huh? No, I'm alright." "Really? I haven't seen you smile in a while. Is there something going on with your in-laws?" No, nothing's wrong. Stop saying weird things." My sister seemed overly defensive and ended up losing her temper. She left for her in-laws' place that day, but she seemed reluctant. After a few days passed, my sister was back. This time she looked really scared. "What's wrong, sis? Why do you look so terrified?" I'm not terrified." "But you're trembling. What happened?" "Oh, no, nothing. It's just a bit cold." I was quite concerned seeing my sister in this unusual state. Shortly after, someone came to our house. It was Sean, my sister's husband.
"So you were here, huh? We were worried."
"Oh, Sean."
"Sorry for the inconvenience. She got a bit homesick, it seems. Let's go home, Rachel."
"Oh, okay." And she left with Sean. There was an air of desperation about her. "Mom, don't you think there's something off about sis?" "You thought so too?" "She looked really scared when she saw Sean." "I thought the same. I was worried." "Do you think she's being mistreated at her in-laws' place?" With that thought, one day, I decided to visit her in-laws' place. Layla, my sister's mother-in-law, greeted me. "Oh my, it's been a while, Ginny. What brings you here?" "Well, my sister has been acting strange, so I was wondering if everything was all right here." "Everything's fine here. There's nothing unusual." "Really? If you say so." We were chatting at the entrance when I heard a loud noise from the living room. What's happening? What's that noise?" "I don't know. Anyway, I'm busy today. You should head back." "Wait a minute. Why won't you let me in?" You're already in the doorway, aren't you? That's not what I meant. Layla flatly refused to let me inside the house. Eventually, I was turned away and couldn't check on my sister. However, a few days later, a shocking incident occurred. My sister returned home crying. Oh, what's wrong, sis? Are you okay? What happened? All she did was cry. She couldn't tell me what had happened. Upon closer inspection, I noticed several bruises on her body. It seemed like she'd been harmed by Layla and Sean. This is awful. How could they do something like this? I held my sister tightly as we cried together, but it seemed she had something even more troubling on her mind than her own well-being. The baby! Our baby! My sister already has a child, but the little one is still an infant, unable to do anything by himself. She had come here, but there was no sign of the baby with her. Sis, where's the baby? What happened to the baby? As I asked, she answered through her tears. The baby. They hurt our baby. What do you mean they hurt? What did they do? I've been enduring this for so long. Sean's abuse, my mother-in-law's unreasonable harassment, but when I finally fought back, they threatened the baby. That's too horrible. In order to protect the baby, I endured as much as I could, but... From there, her voice quivered and couldn't speak any further. That's when Grandpa arrived.
What's going on? What happened?
My sister, in tears, explained the situation to Grandpa.
Huh?
That's all Grandpa said after hearing the story. In the next moment, he was on the phone with someone. Who are you calling? When I asked, Grandpa didn't answer, but simply said, we're going to their house. So, taking Mom, my sister, and me along, Grandpa drove us towards the in-laws' house. After about a 10-minute drive, we arrived at their place. What's going on? What a surprise to see the whole family come over. The one who welcomed us was Layla. She spoke as if she knew nothing.
I've heard that you hurt my dear granddaughter, and even my great-grandchild.
Grandpa said this quietly, but Layla just laughed. Who cares? It's not a big deal. And besides, it's all her fault anyway. She pointed at my sister. I wondered what she could possibly be blaming my sister for. She told Sean to limit his sausage intake because of its high purine content, since he was eating it almost every day. What's wrong with letting him eat what he likes? My sister had simply been concerned about her husband's health.
And you? You hurt my granddaughter over something like that?
You're the ones making a fuss over nothing. It's absurd for you to come all the way here with your whole family. Are you fools? Layla was laughing, not at all embarrassed. Grandpa was silent, but the lines between his brows showed. He was clearly angry. Then my sister's husband Sean appeared. Hey Rachel, you're finally back. Did you go to your parents again? I was worried about you, you know. He didn't look worried at all as he spoke. So, why is the whole family here?
We're here to take you down.
Huh? Take down? Mom, what's this old man talking about? I don't know. Maybe he's going senile? While Layla and Sean were laughing, Grandpa started to laugh as well.
The hell are you laughing at? I was just thinking about what's going to happen to you two. Should be any minute now.
Arrive? What are you talking about? As Grandpa finished his sentence, one car after another began pulling up and parking in front of my in-laws' house. What's happening? People started getting out of the cars, one after the other, completely surrounding the house. There must have been about 30 people there, give or take, and I recognized most of their faces. They were all my relatives. What on earth? Who are all these people? Why have so many come?
They're my family. They all thought they'd step in because they heard my precious granddaughter had been mistreated.
What? Stop crowding the front of our house like this. You're being a nuisance.
Well then, let's go inside your house.
With that, Grandpa led our relatives inside the house. Hey, don't barge in like that. We followed Grandpa inside and in the living room. There was my sister's baby, crying. Oh no, his face is all swollen. My sister quickly picked up the baby. Could it be they've been hurting the baby ever since my sister left? That would be a major problem.
Did you really hurt such a small child?
That's not it. This was an unavoidable situation. We didn't want to do this. According to Layla, the baby wouldn't stop crying, so they had no choice but to hit him. Normally, you don't hit a child just because they won't stop crying. Layla and Sean are not right in the head.
I can't forgive this. How dare you do this to my family? Some of our relatives are police officers, so it's possible to take you in on assault charges.
Grandpa was saying this in anger.
Wait, you have police officers? But doesn't this fall under civil matters?
Not necessarily if there's evidence of assault.
When Grandpa checked with the relatives, they agreed. After what they did to my sister and the baby, I won't be satisfied until they're taken away by the police. But Layla and Sean were still making feeble excuses.
There's no need to push this hard. We just need to ensure this doesn't happen again. It's cruel to be so angry over this.
Layla's voice trembled as she said this. It seemed she realized the severity of the situation.
Hey, Rachel, say something too. We didn't do anything wrong, did we? It was just a little rough handling.
Even Sean started to make a pathetic excuse. But my sister just looked down in silence.
Hey, say something, Rachel. We're married, right? Help me out here,
Sean yelled at my sister. Grandpa immediately shielded my sister and yelled at Sean.
How dare you talk to my granddaughter like that?
But Rachel and I are married. You can't just meddle in a couple's issues like this. It's not right.
Sean tried to argue back, but Grandpa didn't flinch. He just kept confronting Sean.
Enough is enough. By your logic, no matter how much you hurt Rachel, we can't intervene because we're not blood related. As family, how can we possibly stand by?
Grandpa's rage was unyielding, and Sean was so scared that he started to cry.
Wait just a minute. You're the ones who barged into our house. Isn't that trespassing? If I call the police, aren't you the ones who would get arrested?
We're willing to face any punishment for that. But you should be aware that you're doing something far worse than us trespassing, right? You need to face that first.
Wait, what are you saying?
Tears began to stream down Layla's face. Suddenly, Layla stormed into the crowd of relatives.
Hey, what do you think you're doing?
As Grandpa tried to stop her, Layla had already lunged at my sister.
What were you thinking, calling all these people over? You're causing us problems. Go home, now.
Layla was shaking my sister by her shoulders.
Fix this. Fix this right now.
Stop it. Let go.
Grandpa forcefully pulled Layla away.
Wow, throwing a fragile woman like that. How cruel. Could this be considered assault?
Layla tried to provoke him, but Grandpa was not swayed.
Don't think that'll work. Instead, the problem is you attacking Rachel just now.
But it's not my fault. We were living peacefully and then this happens because of her.
You might have been living in peace, but Rachel wasn't. It seems you've been quite cruel to her. Even to your own great-grandchild. How can you be so shameless?
I'm not being shameless. I'm just stating the facts. Right? Rachel, say something. You've been silent this whole time.
It's your fault all of this is happening. Layla continued to yell at my sister. Then, my sister, who had been silent with her head down, finally spoke up. Mother-in-law, I don't want to live in this house anymore.
What are you talking about?
You and Sean have always treated me terribly. I never thought my marriage would be like this. I want a divorce.
A divorce? What are you saying all of a sudden, Rachel?
My sister must have been holding back for a long time. To protect her child, she sacrificed herself. But with the support of Grandpa and Mom, she seemed to find her courage. She declared her intention to divorce Sean with a steely gaze.
Don't joke around. I'll never agree to a divorce. You're going to live as my servant forever.
No way. I'm not your tool. I won't let you control me.
You're
definitely my granddaughter. When you decide to act, you really act.
Grandpa was impressed by my sister's strong stance.
This isn't the time for this conversation. I won't allow a divorce with Sean. I need a servant too.
If you're saying you'll divorce, you need to pay Sean compensation. Why would there be any need for compensation? Of course! You've been a pain in the neck for Sean all this while. You owe us a few $1,000,000 in damages.
Hold on, that's out of line.
Grandpa quickly stepped back into the conversation.
It's rather you who've been the bother, isn't it? You've treated Rachel and my great-granddaughter horribly. You should be the ones paying damages in the divorce.
What? There's no way we're paying that. Besides, we don't have that kind of money.
I won't accept any excuses. You'll pay, even in installments. We have lawyers in the family, so don't think you can just run away.
What? What? You even have lawyers?
Mom, what are we gonna do in this situation? Should we apologize?
Fool! What are you talking about? We don't even know if an apology will be accepted.
But if the company finds out we're getting divorced, it will become awkward at work.
Work?
Grandpa seemed to remember something when he heard that.
Come to think of it, I felt like I'd heard of Rachel's husband's company somewhere. I remember now. You work for the company run by my relatives.
What? You have relatives there too?
There are plenty of punishments waiting for you. But your trespassing isn't the worst of your crimes, is it? We'll need to address that first.
Fired? Not just divorced, but fired? Don't joke around. I absolutely won't allow that.
Do you think saying you don't want to will get you off the hook? Reflect on what you've done.
Mom, do something. I'm going to get fired.
You people. This is just outrageous. It's unfair. Piling up on us like this.
Who was the one doing outrageous things first? All I've been doing is protecting my adorable granddaughter.
Grandpa's eyes were stern as he glared at Layla and Sean. They were so frightened they couldn't even retort.
Let's end this conversation here. Rachel, you can rest easy. Our relatives will handle the rest.
Thank you, Grandpa. As Grandpa began to leave the in-laws' home with my sister, Layla and Sean started to cry out in despair.
Wait! We're the ones who were wrong. Please, don't go through the divorce. I'm begging you.
Sean was shouting desperately, but my sister didn't look back. She got into Grandpa's car and they drove away.
You should give up. Everything that's happened is your own doing.
Why? Why did this have to happen? It's all Mom's fault. What? I'm not the one at fault here. You are.
What did you just say?
Sean and Layla kept arguing until they were out of sight. We went home after that, leaving the legal matters to our family lawyer, the police, and our company's owner. In the end, my sister was able to divorce Sean and even managed to get a settlement. Furthermore, Sean was fired from his job and it seemed hard for him to find a new one. My sister was finally free and she couldn't help but cry tears of joy. A while later, we noticed Sean begin to loiter around our house. It seemed like he wanted to reconcile with my sister, but she had no intention of that happening. The moment Grandpa saw Sean, he was furious. He immediately called our family member, who was a police officer, and had Sean arrested for stalking. After that, a restraining order was placed on Sean, and he no longer came around our house. Finally, peace had come to our home. My sister said she plans to raise her baby with the support of our family for a while. I too am helping take care of the baby and enjoying my life with my wonderful family.
One day, I came home to find my room completely empty. What the heck is going on? Behind me, I heard a triumphant voice from my sister-in-law. Childless, unproductive old woman like you can do nothing but stand in my way. Get out. Sister-in-law was trying to move me out and take over my parents' house. I was single. That is ridiculous. I'll thoroughly investigate your wicked scheme. My name is Catherine. I'm a single 40-year-old office worker. It's not that I've never met someone good, but for various reasons, I ended up never getting married. Sometimes I feel lonely, but, well, that's life. I've reached the age where I can accept that marriage isn't everything. Being single is indeed carefree. Plus, there's a matter of taking care of my parents. I have one older brother, but he lives far away from our parents' home. My brother left our hometown to pursue his career, and since our father passed away 3 years ago, my mother had to live by herself. Living not too far from my parents' home, I became concerned about my elderly mother and decided to take the plunge and live with her. Now it's just the two of us, 2 women, enjoying our peaceful days. However, my mother, whose mind is still sharp, broke her leg a year ago and has become disabled. She has difficulty walking with a cane, and she mostly moves around by car or wheelchair. She's somewhat disabled in the house as well, and has become in need of care. Because I am single and able to live with her, she has been taken care of. If I were married and living elsewhere or living far away, it would have been quite difficult, so I guess it's been all right that I'm still single. Yeah. That said, while I'm content with my life, there's someone who's not happy about it. My sister-in-law. My brother married a woman who is much younger than him. So even though she is a sister-in-law, she is younger than me in her early 30s. A young sister-in-law. My brother's family lives far away, but they come home for the holidays like Christmas and summer vacation. However, for some reason, every time they visit, the sister-in-law is harsh towards me. This past Christmas, when my brother's family came to visit us, the sister-in-law came over and whispered in my ear, "Catherine, still mooching off your parents, I see." What? No, I'm not exactly mooching off them. Living at your parents' home at 40 years old and being single, if that's not a parasite, I don't know what is. Is that so? Yes, I'm raising 3 children, you know. Do you get what I mean? What do you mean? The population of our state is decreasing, isn't it? Our family is contributing to the population increase. Singles like you are truly harmful. Harmful? Do you enjoy decreasing the population? Is there any point in being born if you're going to be single for life? She goes that far. At least have a child or something. What she said struck a chord within me. Although I am single due to various reasons, there was a man I wanted to marry. But there was a bit of a problem with my body. Simply put, I can't have children. He asked me to be in a relationship with him, and since he had an intent for the future together from the beginning, I laid out everything on the table for him since day one. He said, "I just want to be with you, even if we don't have kids. As long as we're together, I'll be happy." So I agreed to date him. But marriage turned out to be more than just the 2 of us. The trials and dramas we went through ultimately led me to stay single. The appalling words of my sister-in-law left me speechless. And yet, she had the audacity to take advantage of me financially. We have 3 kids, you know. Be fair with your Christmas gifts. We expect them to be generous. We expect you to gift us some money as a kindergarten enrollment celebration, and it's gonna be at least for $1,000. You're not so poor that you can't afford that, right, Auntie? Don't you want to provide a proper education for the kids? Oh, right, you don't have any kids, so you wouldn't understand. But I let you have the joy of raising our kids, so pay for their extracurricular activities. It's like she thinks if she uses the kids as an excuse, she can get away with more money. Sure, I'll give gifts for occasions, but I don't understand why I have to bear with her tisk-tisking after she checks the amount of money in the envelope on the spot. And why should I be the one to pay for their extracurricular activities? When I bring it up to my mom or my brother, they make incredulous faces, unable to believe such audacity of my sister-in-law because they haven't seen it. That's right, she only ever behaves this way when it's just the 2 of us. She's pretty slick. This past New Year's holiday, she immediately opened the New Year's gifts I gave to my nephew and niece. It was while my brother was out of the room, having stepped away for a moment to help my mom with something. She spat out, "Huh? This is it? This paltry sum is your gift? Just how poor are you, you stingy bitch?" It's another comment that my mom and brother find hard to believe, so I'm thinking I should start recording her. However, there would be such negative repercussions on the family relationships if I keep tattling on, so I can't say much. After all, my mom has 3 adorable grandkids. If my complaints lead to my sister-in-law refusing to visit, my mom would be deprived of seeing her grandchildren. That would be too sad for my mom, so I just need to be quiet. If I can just dismiss her harsh remarks, everything will settle down. That's what I thought, until the situation completely changed one day. It was a weekday when my sister came over. It was during the week, so my brother was at work and I was working from home. My mom was at a senior daycare center. The kids were at the daycare and they were going to their maternal grandparents straight after. My sister-in-law was visiting me alone. I was wondering why she was here on such an unusual day. Then she got right down to business. You know, I've been thinking that we should move in here. Excuse me? Talk about a bolt from the blue. What on earth is she trying to say? You mean move in? That's what I said. We've been thinking of moving in here. Who's we? Our family. Where exactly? Don't make me repeat myself. Into this house. Why? Because I'm pregnant with our 4th child. What? In my brother's family, they already have 3 kids. The oldest is in early elementary school. The middle one is a kindergartner, and the youngest just started preschool. Even though they already have 3 kids, they're having a 4th. I can't help but be impressed. However, they currently live near the sister-in-law's parents' house, so they probably get help with the kids like today. If so, what's the advantage of moving over here? John's gonna be transferred here, that's why. John is my brother. Oh, I remember my brother mentioning something like that. Apparently a branch office is going to open here in our hometown. Who wants to go to the branch office? Me. Apparently he volunteered for the position quite willingly. I wonder why the personnel decisions can be made so casually. Is it okay with you, sis? I mean, wouldn't it be better to stay closer to your parents' place? My parents are still working, so I really can't rely on them too much. They start to frown if I ask too often, saying stuff like, ask your husband first, or don't make children assuming you can depend on your parents. It'd be hard to mention that we were having a 4th, right? That's your business. How would I know? I can understand her parents' perspective. According to my brother, when he comes home from work, he does the cleaning, the laundry, and even prepares dinner. My sister-in-law confirmed that that is true. Even though he must be tired from work, my brother has always been very considerate of his wife and has helped as much as possible. It could be because of this that my brother seemed tired whenever I saw him from time to time. Still, isn't having another child a bit too reckless? Yet, life is a gift. It's a happy event, and I have no intention of saying, why not just stop having kids? But why are they planning on moving in with us? I must have looked puzzled, my sister-in-law continued. It's a hassle to deal with my parents, and where we live now is just too remote from everything and too inconvenient. So instead of letting John live and work by himself here, we thought it would be nice for all of us to move in. Well, there are a lot of daycares for kids here, right? So, Catherine, could you please move out soon? Excuse me? Once again, I'm taken aback. What the heck is my sister-in-law saying, for God's sake? As far as moving in, let's discuss that with my mother and brother, but why should I be the one to move out? Think about it. We're going to be a family of 6 soon, right? That's true. So isn't this house going to be too small? Well, that's true. Well, I suppose so. That's why I'm telling you to get out. No, I don't understand what you mean. Having 6 in the family is a lot, but it's not impossible for 8 of us to live together, including my mom and myself. Of course, when the kids grow up, it's impossible for all of them to live in an individual room, but I didn't think there was any point in worrying that far ahead. My sister-in-law, annoyed by my increasing confusion, raised her voice. I mean, come on. You're in the way. You, an old woman, can't even have kids. For our sake, get out. What? Oh, and don't move too far away, okay? You're still going to have to look after our kids. What? After ranting, she added, get out of here soon, and then went home. This needs a family meeting, yeah. That night, I told my mom about what Susan had said and called my brother. My brother told me that he'd arrange a separate house for his family. Sure, I've been traveling a lot for work, and I think it's been tough on Susan. That's why we were living near her parents' home in good old Nebraska. But is she really so bothered by the countryside? On the other end of the phone, my brother sounded confused. There was still something that was perplexing, but her idea of moving into our home was temporarily dropped. Well, that was supposed to be the case. One day, after a stretch of working from home, I went into the office for the first time in a while. My mom was away from home, staying overnight at the daycare. Exhausted from work, I came home to get stunned. What? My room? Everything's gone. Believe it or not, my room was empty. All of my belongings were gone. What is this? What's going on? This was undeniably my own home, yet my room was missing. To be precise, my stuff was missing. Where are all my favorite things? I threw them away. All of them. I was screaming in shock when a sudden voice came from behind me, making my heart skip a beat. When I turned around, there was Susan. Susan, what are you doing here so late? Shut up, you'll wake the kids. What? The 3 kids are here? Until the beds arrive tomorrow, they're sleeping on the living room couch. I rushed into the living room where my nephews and niece were sound asleep. What's going on? Looking at me, completely stunned and at a loss for words, Susan laughed and said, "You wouldn't leave the house, so I had to resort to drastic measures. I'm not leaving. I've already talked to my brother about this. Do you think you can just do whatever you want? Don't you have any idea how many people you're inconveniencing?" Who's the one doing whatever they want here? I'm the one inconvenienced. I really wanted to get those words out of my mouth, but I held my tongue because the kids were asleep. My sister-in-law, Susan, ignores my considerations and loudly declares, "Who cares what your mother or brother says? If you move out and our family moves in, those 2 wouldn't oppose this idea for sure." What happened to my stuff? I had a junk removal service take it all away. No way. Did she really throw out all of my precious things, including my photo albums? This is unbelievable. Come on, if you understand, then get out. Wait, no arguing. I tried to resist, but she's younger and stronger than me. Overpowered, I was thrown out of the house, right there. It was at night, and making a fuss wouldn't do me any good. She ignored the doorbells and the phone calls as well. With no other choice, I spent the night at a no-frills hotel. The next day, I took a day off from work and rushed home. As I was about to unlock the door and enter the house, Susan came out faster. "Oh, Susan, I tried to contact my brother but couldn't reach him. Let's talk anyway. My husband is on a long business trip abroad. The time difference makes it hard to get in touch with him, you know. I was about to leave, so make sure you look after my kids." Susan! Leaving me in shock, she left quickly. She was all dressed up and everything. With no other choice, I looked after the 3 kids and had a bitter expression when I welcomed my mom home in the evening. "Mom, isn't this a bit much?" "Yes, it's a bit much to ignore John's opinions and be so forceful. Leaving the 3 kids and going out is unbelievable. If she wanted to leave the kids with someone, her own parents would be the best option." "Yes, what are the real benefits of living here?" Speaking of which, she went out quite dressed up. Really? There might be a clue in that. Agreeing with my mother's words, I immediately requested an investigation from a private detective. A month later, I now live in a 1-bedroom apartment as a temporary residence, which I had to find in a fluster. My room in my parents' house has been completely remodeled by Susan, and it's nowhere near what it used to be. John was furious, saying, "Don't do as you please," but she seemed to argue that once they moved in, it'd be their place. And she also seemed to say things like, "You're often away from work, aren't you? I thought it'd be nice for the family to stay together, so I came along. Raising children is really hard. It's just natural to live together with your family and get help from them." When he mentioned that my mother was in need of care, she responded, "Catherine is there, isn't she? She's just at home all the time. She must have a lot of free time." I'm not sitting around. I'm actually working from home. But Susan seems adamant about not letting me back into the house. Don't you dare think you can get away with this bullshit forever. We're gonna have a talk. With that assertive statement from my brother, a family meeting was held today. "Why so sudden? I'm pregnant. Let's wrap this up quickly, okay?" Susan grumbled as she rubbed her still not visibly pregnant belly. Ignoring her, my brother, Mom, Susan, and I, 4 adults, huddled together in the living room. By the way, we've left the kids at a weekend daycare. First off, Susan, please apologize for disposing of my belongings without my permission. At my words, Susan scoffed and said, "It's your own fault for not moving out sooner," without an ounce of hesitation. "People like you who can't even have kids should just live in a run-down apartment." Yes, it's true that I can't have kids, but I was living together for Mom's sake. "But your mother-in-law would be happier living with her grandkids than with you," Susan said, looking at my mom. My mom replied, "Of course I'd be happy to live with my grandkids," but hearing this, Susan smirked triumphantly. "See? Did you hear that? It's much more meaningful for us to live together than an unproductive person like you." But, ignoring Susan's words, Mom continued, "If they were my real grandchildren, Huh? Susan was dumbfounded, not understanding my mom's words. At that moment, my brother presented a large envelope. What is this? The result of your affair investigation. My brother responded calmly. Huh? Susan seemed surprised and stared at my brother, who continued speaking, unflustered. You thought we wouldn't find out, didn't you? What are you talking about? I didn't cheat on you. Really? So these pictures are photoshopped, huh? In response to Susan's denial, my brother spread several pictures on the table. In them, wait, no. There were photos of Susan flirting with a guy. I thought it was strange when you forced us to move away from our parents who help with the kids to move in here. But the city is more convenient, isn't it? But you're not even using any childcare services and pushing the childcare onto Catherine, aren't you? Well, I need a break too. Then why not use the childcare service like today? It's a waste of money. Do you think I haven't given you enough money? I'm saving up for our future. What does that mean when our bank account is down to zero? Saying this, John spread the bank book. Indeed, it was completely zero. What? Hey, why are you just looking through that like it's nothing? It's our family money. Of course I have the right to check. So, where's the savings for our future? Well, in a different account. Oh, really? Let's see that bank book then. I don't have it right now. Where is it? Well, As I watched her continue lying, Susan finally stumbled on her words. Although it wasn't particularly hot, sweat trickled down her forehead. Maybe in the attic? At that moment, John smacked the table hard. Enough with the lies. Can you still make excuses in front of this picture? Oh, sorry. It was just a momentary lapse of judgment. You've been having an affair with this man for a while. Ever since we got married, right? The guy told me. What? No, why did you talk to him? He's got a family too. He told me everything under the condition that I wouldn't tell his wife. What? He betrayed me. The one who betrayed us is you. Susan seemed flustered in front of John's angry face, but eventually she seemed to regain her composure and the sweat had stopped. Then she said, Well, I do regret the affair. I won't do it again. Of course not. But I think it's better not to divorce. It's better for the kids to be with their mother, and more importantly, I'm carrying a new life in my womb. You don't want to be apart from the child, do you? Looking at me, Susan continued. You can't expect grandchildren from a childless daughter, and if I take the kids and leave after the divorce, you'll never see your grandkids again. Is that what you want, mother-in-law? Then she turned towards my mother. Seeing our silence, Susan laughed triumphantly. See? Isn't a barren old woman just a nuisance? It's natural that she should leave. Susan stomped around, huffing and puffing. But then, something unexpected happened. Mother quietly said, Well, you, who are totally unproductive to me, should also leave with your child. Huh? As she started to smile, puzzled by what she heard, John presented a document to her. What's this? Huh? DNA test results? Negative? What is this? It's the result of a DNA test between me and the kids. When did you? That ain't none of your business. Anyway, the results are as they are, all three. They aren't my kids. And here are the results with your affair partner. Confirmation, meaning they are indeed your kids. What? Huh? My kids ain't mine, meaning they're not my ma's grandchildren. They're complete strangers. No way. It ain't a lie. You knew it, didn't you? You knew, and you pulled a cuckoo move on me, didn't you? I didn't. That's what the other guy said. You said, it's sad that our children can't live together as a family, to him. Susan looked so pale, she might fall over at any moment. And then my mom gave the coup de grace. So you're a burden because you can't bear my son's children. Please pack up and leave with the kids and hurry. What? Are you going to throw us out into the street? Such young kids? You monster! It was then that Susan cried out, trying to elicit sympathy. The monster here is you. A different loud voice echoed through the room. Susan spun around and her eyes bulged. Dad? Why are you here? And Mom too? Yes, there stood Susan's real parents. They've agreed to take all the children once I explain the situation. You stupid daughter! Can there be a more disgraceful story as a parent? I'm sorry. Apparently, Susan can't hold her ground against her father. Her face turned blue as she sobbed. John, and to his mother, and Catherine, I'm really sorry for my stupid daughter. We'll definitely make her pay for the damages. Damages? Wait a minute. I can't afford that. Are you going to pay for me, Dad? No way. I'll front you, but you're paying me back even if it takes you a lifetime. So her father took Susan, who was seriously on the brink of tears, away without waiting for a reply. Her mom, who kept bowing deeply to us in apology, was quite memorable. Even though they're good parents, they raised such a daughter. Raising kids is tough, isn't it? I found myself musing about this in a rather carefree way. Then afterward, my brother John ended up getting a divorce without a hitch. The money for the alimony and what she had splurged on her infidelity was apparently paid off all at once by her parents. The kids were taken back to their grandparents' home. They had often been left there before, so it seems they're growing up just fine without any confusion. The kids didn't do anything wrong. John, who had always thought they were his real children, said this with a touch of sadness. There's no way you can accept it when you're suddenly told they're not yours. I'm hoping that one day John's emotional wounds will heal. 3 years later, John found a good match and had his real child. But that's another story. As for my brother's ex-wife, Susan, she gave birth to her 4th child, and sure enough, when she tested it for peace of mind, it wasn't John's child. Under strict supervision of her parents, she seems to have been working like mad from morning till night for a while, but she seemed to continue her relationship with her lover undeterred. In the end, her affair was also exposed to her lover's wife. After the huge fight, more alimony was incurred, and it seems she was kicked out of the house by her parents. No one knows what became of her after that. As for me, I'm living peaceful days while taking care of my mom, same as always. In fact, the personal items she disposed of were all retrieved on the same day by contacting the waste disposal company. On such a peaceful day, a familiar face appeared before me. It's been a while. The person smiling before me was the guy I once thought of marrying. I couldn't forget about you, and I have been single all this time. Even my parents finally gave in. They have a rather selfish reason. My brother got married and had a child. They told me I could do as I please about marriage. Caught off guard, he presented me with a ring. It may be too late, but I can't think of anyone but you. I want to help you take care of your mother, so could you please marry me? Unable to hold back, my face crumpled in tears. Without hesitation, I jumped into his arms, where he held me with a gentle smile.
Celebrating my 3rd wedding anniversary, but this year David is not by my side. Why? Because he's been on a solo work assignment for the past 6 months. If he can't come home because of work, then I'll surprise him by going to see him. I'll dress up real special. But what I saw at David's place of assignment was him entering an apartment with a woman I've never seen before. I can't believe this. How could he cheat on me like this? Is this who he really is? Well, 2 can play that game. And so began my quest for revenge on David. My name is Karen Smith. I'm 29 years old. I work a regular job while maintaining a married life, a working housewife. David and I have been married for 2 years now. Adding in the time we dated, we have a relationship that spans about 5 years. We met through mutual friends during my first year in the workforce. One of my college buddies worked at the same company as David, and we happened to run into each other at a pub. I was alone. They were having a drink with colleagues. A friend noticed me and invited me to join, and that's how it all began. From there, David and I started exchanging contact information and texting. At the time, my head was full of work. I couldn't imagine dating anyone. Apparently, David felt the same way. Whenever we had free time, we'd meet at a pub and vent to each other. Listen, David, my boss got mad at me today for the dumbest reason. Oh man, I totally get it. They act like they told you something when they never did. Exactly. If you're telling me to do something I don't know about, at least explain it to me. Yeah, you're telling me. Well, let's just drink for now. Sounds good. Tomorrow's a day off. Let's hop to a few places tonight. Our relationship was like a friendship or sibling bond. David became increasingly important to me. After about 2 years of knowing him, I think I've fallen for you, Karen. We were at our usual pub, trying to sober up on a park bench, when David suddenly said this. Caught off guard, my voice wavered. What? Even though it was winter, I felt hot. Apparently, David felt the same way. His face, illuminated by the moonlight, had a faint blush, and I knew it wasn't because of the alcohol. Seeing my confusion, David continued. Karen, will you be my girlfriend? Are you sure about me? Yes, it's you that I want, Karen. We're like best friends who can talk about anything and care for each other. I think you're the only one I can have that kind of relationship with. David! And so, a romantic relationship began. It felt more like a friendship than a romance, but it was happiness nonetheless. Fast forward 6 months, and we were approaching our 3rd wedding anniversary. For the last 2 anniversaries, we reserved a restaurant, had a delightful dinner, and came home to eat cake. We could either continue the same tradition this year or try something new. Even though the date was half a year away, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Then one day, I had just gotten home and was preparing dinner while waiting for David. About an hour later, David came back. I was frying chicken, so I couldn't leave the kitchen, but I yelled, "Welcome home!" But there was no reply from David. I had definitely heard the front door, and usually he would say, "I'm home." Puzzled, I turned off the stove and went to the entrance. David was standing there, looking downcast. Confused, I spoke to David. "David, what's wrong? Are you not feeling well?" "No, it's not that." "Then what's going on? You look really down."
Something came up at work today.
Did something go wrong with his job? With that thought, I casually asked, "What did they say?" David, still looking glum, finally spoke.
I have to go on a solo assignment to New Orleans starting next month.
What?
The guy who was supposed to go had to quit because of family reasons, so they want me to go instead.
You're kidding. Why so suddenly? And New Orleans is so far away.
I'm really sorry, but there's a promotion involved, and I couldn't say no.
Are you serious? According to David, it was difficult to turn down the assignment given the circumstances. It was only for 6 months, and considering his future, the promotion was important. But was it normal for a husband to decide on such a thing without consulting his wife? Despite several attempts to discuss it with David, the result remained the same. I also had my job, so I couldn't go with David to New Orleans. I reluctantly agreed to live separately for 6 months.
Let's celebrate our wedding anniversary when I come back.
With that promise, David's life on assignment began. 2 months later. At first, it was lonely without him, but I gradually got used to life alone. Our daily routine became evening phone calls to share updates about our day. That evening, as usual, I dialed his number at 9 p.m., but for some reason, David didn't answer. He usually picks up within a few rings. A wave of anxiety hit me. I texted him but got no reply. Getting worried, I kept calling him over and over. Finally, on the 6th or so try, David answered.
Karen, what's up?
What do you mean, what's up? I was worried.
Sorry, I was working late.
Working late? I thought your company doesn't do overtime.
Huh? Oh, well, I've gotten used to things, so I'm choosing to stay late. Don't want my performance to slip.
I see. Must be tough.
So I hate to say it, but I may not be able to call as often. I want to hit the hay as soon as I get home.
How could he say that out of the blue? Or is it that I'm the only one feeling lonely? Knowing David was busy, I opened up about how I felt. I get that you're busy, David, but I want to talk. Even if it's just for a few minutes a day.
That's easier said than done.
Please, I'll manage when you really can't.
Fine. I'm tired now, so I'm hanging up. Bye. What? Wait, David. He cut the call before I could finish. The sound of the call ending left me with an empty feeling. What's gotten into David? We promised to talk daily before his assignment started, and his recent behavior was distant. Is talking to me that much of a burden? I started to feel it was my fault for his lackluster response. It was already hard not being able to see him, and now we couldn't even talk? The loneliness was piling up. Time flew, and it had been 5 months since David left for New Orleans. Our wedding anniversary was fast approaching, but the state of our relationship was far from marital. We barely texted, let alone talked on the phone. Even if I responded quickly, David would take days to reply. I just want to hear your voice over the phone, even if it's brief. Despite my plea, he stubbornly insisted he was too busy. The mood wasn't right for discussing our anniversary, and our conversations became increasingly superficial. Our anniversary was just 3 days away. I subtly texted David, "Can you come home this weekend?" If he remembered our anniversary, he would surely come home. Even though we could celebrate once his work assignment was done, I just couldn't help but want to see him now. Then a call from David came through. It had been a while since he initiated contact, so I answered, filled with anticipation. "Hey, David. About the text I sent." "Sorry, can't do it." "What?" "I've told you, I'm swamped with work. Can't make it home." "You're kidding." "That's the way it is." And just like that, David hung up. Such a brief conversation after so long. Only a few seconds? David sounded rushed over the phone, giving me the impression he was swamped with work. I felt down that David couldn't come home, but then it struck me. That's it. Why don't I go to him? Make it a surprise. If David's too busy to come home, I should go to him. How did I not think of this simple solution before? Decision made. I was all set to surprise David over the weekend. Fast forward to our anniversary day. I was on a flight to New Orleans where David was on assignment. It was Saturday, and David was likely working. I knew his apartment address, so I decided to wait at a nearby cafe until he came home. This was a surprise, so I didn't inform David. I kept an eye on his apartment from the cafe window. What should I say when I see him? He'll surely be surprised. Lost in thought and excitement, I looked outside and saw someone who looked like David. As I was about to pay and leave, an unbelievable scene caught my eye. What? You're kidding me. A young woman quickly ran up to David, who was waiting outside his apartment. He greeted her with a warm smile and caressed her head. Arm in arm, they both went into his apartment, looking happy. The David I knew was gone. My intense desire to see David shattered in an instant. I can't believe it. He lied about being busy and was cheating on me. How much more does he plan to humiliate me? I can never forgive him. I'll make them both regret this. Any remaining love for David evaporated, replaced by a thirst for revenge. I immediately caught a flight back and headed straight to a reputable law firm. Next, I commissioned a personal investigation on David from a private investigation agency. In about a week, I gathered plenty of evidence proving David's infidelity. Maybe he'd let his guard down because he was away on a work assignment. With the evidence in hand, I went to see a lawyer. While preparing for the divorce, I also began packing my things to move out. I managed to finish moving 2 days before David returned home from his assignment. Since the apartment we lived in was originally in my name from my single days, I ended the lease when I moved. And finally, the day David was to return home arrived. After dinner, I was thinking it should be any moment now when, as expected, the phone rang. Taking a deep breath.
I answered. David immediately started yelling.
Hey, Karen! What the hell is going on here?
What do you mean?
Don't play dumb. Why are so many things missing from the house? Even the appliances are almost all gone.
Well, that's because I moved them to my new place.
What? New place?
David seemed unable to grasp the situation, raising his voice.
What do you mean?
So I kindly explained. I moved out because I don't want to be your wife anymore.
What? What are you saying? I just got back from my work assignment.
That work assignment must have been fun. Cheating behind my back, huh? The moment I said cheating, David started to stammer. Thinking he could somehow talk his way out of it, he fired back.
What are you talking about? Cheating? I would never do such a thing.
But you did, right?
No, I didn't. Are you still holding a grudge because I couldn't keep in touch due to work? It couldn't be helped. I really was busy. I was working even on my days off.
Wow, you're good at lying. I saw it, you know.
Saw what?
I saw you going into an apartment with a young woman at your work assignment location.
What?
David probably hasn't fully comprehended my words.
No way. I would never cheat,
he muttered as if talking to himself. That's when I sent all the photographic evidence of his infidelity to his phone. So, can you still say you weren't cheating after seeing what I just sent?
What is this?
I hired a private investigation agency after I found out you were cheating. Can't believe I got this much evidence in just a week's personal investigation. You must have felt really secure during your assignment, huh?
No, this isn't what it looks like.
Confronted with the evidence, David was visibly shaken. Even while panicking, he insisted.
It's not cheating. She's just a junior colleague.
But of course, all his claims were nothing but lies. The private investigator's photos made it pretty clear. There were shots of them kissing in public and walking arm in arm like a couple. So there's no way out for David now. The more he tries to explain, the more credible the evidence becomes. It seems like David doesn't realize he's digging his own grave.
I was just helping out a junior colleague. She's like a sister to me. I only love Karen.
His ridiculous excuses make me more disappointed than angry. I had enough and said point blank, "Stop it, David. It's pretty obvious you're cheating."
No, you've got it all wrong. She's just a colleague.
So, you kiss and cuddle with just colleagues? Wow, that's creepy.
No, it's a misunderstanding. Let's meet up and talk it over, you'll see.
I finally reached my breaking point. Shut up!
What? Karen, what did you just say?
I said shut up, you awful man. At the sound of my shouting, David was at a loss for words. Furious, I yelled at him through the phone. You think your pathetic excuses will fly? Who'd believe a cheater like you? I'm done trusting you, David. Count me out.
Wait, Karen. Let's at least talk.
No more talking, got it? I'll make sure you and your affair partner pay every dime in the divorce settlement. And I'm telling both our families and your workplace, prepare for your life to be over. I hung up without waiting for David's reply. Deleted his contact information, cutting him off completely. After that, I divorced David. I took legal action, demanding a lump sum payment for damages in the divorce trial. Apparently, David emptied nearly his entire savings, and his affair partner went into debt to pay. This led to a big fight between them, and they broke up. Or rather, David got dumped. After the divorce was finalized, I reported everything to both families and their employer. Since the affair partner was a junior colleague from David's remote workplace, they both got fired. His finances drained, relationship ruined, and now jobless. David's chances of recovery seem slim. He sought financial aid from his family, but they disowned him upon learning about his cheating. It's pitiful, really. But not like he deserves any sympathy. As for me, I've moved on, living a fulfilling life in a new home. My job is going as well as ever, and I spend my free weekends engrossed in my newfound hobby of crafting. Being alone doesn't feel lonely anymore. I plan to use my time joyfully, living life for myself.
After coming home from a week-long honeymoon, we heard strange noises coming from inside the house. We were worried that it might be a burglar. Do you hear that? Someone might be in the house. Should we call the police? My husband, unfazed, said, "It's fine," and walked inside. I followed him in a hurry and found mother-in-law and sister-in-law inside. Relieved it wasn't a burglar, I still couldn't understand why they were in our house. Apparently, they had taken the keys from my husband to look after the house while we were gone. We thought they would leave once we returned, but they showed no signs of doing so. It's getting dark. Time for you to go.
Oh, can't we stay a bit longer?
Not only they did not leave, but they also took over the living room and started using our bathroom. I thought they would surely leave the next day, but even when I came back from work, they were still there. I couldn't take it anymore. I asked my husband to make them leave. He replied,
"We're all living here now. If you don't like it, you can leave."
"All right," I said. Packed a suitcase with essentials and left the house. My name is Adeline, and I am 29 years old, magazine editor. I met my now husband Dave 3 years ago through a friend. With little dating experience, I was drawn to Dave, who was decisive and took the lead. He confessed his feelings, and after dating for 3 years, we got married. Whether choosing a new home or a wedding venue, he was dependable and made things run smoothly. Life was good with him, but I've been stressed with mother-in-law and sister-in-law. Dave's father passed away 10 years ago, so it's just mother-in-law and sister-in-law who is 27. We kept our distance before the wedding, but now they become more intrusive. Mother-in-law calls almost every day asking us to increase her monthly allowance.
"Even $200 would be fine,"
she pleads. Since Dave is the only providing the money, I tell her to talk to him, but she blames me for not being able to increase the allowance. I also get lectured about not visiting their house often enough for cleaning and other duties. On top of that, sister-in-law visits us unannounced, usually when I'm cooking dinner.
"Just making food? I'm hungry, so hurry up,"
she says, sitting on the sofa and eating dinner before leaving. Even after telling her to inform us before coming, nothing changed. Since they're Dave's family, I didn't strongly refuse expecting Dave to step in for me, but that hasn't happened. 6 months into our marriage, Dave and I finally had a chance to go on our long-delayed honeymoon. Our destination was Europe, where we unwound and enjoyed ourselves to the fullest, free from our usual stress. When we got home after a week of bliss, we heard noises inside the house. I felt a pang of fear, thinking a burglar might have broken in while we were away. Do you hear that too? There might be someone inside. Should we call the cops? Dave, unfazed, replied,
"We're fine,"
and walked into the house. I hurried in after him and found my mother-in-law and sister-in-law inside. Relieved that it wasn't a burglar, I was still puzzled about why they were there.
"Oh, you're back."
"Welcome home. Where are my souvenirs? Did you get the bracelet I asked for?"
"There's no way we bought that. It's too expensive."
As I stood there, stunned, the three of them continued their animated conversation. Why are you guys here?
"You're annoyed we're here, aren't you? Houses are vulnerable when empty. We stayed to protect your home. You should be thankful."
Apparently, mother-in-law and sister-in-law had gotten the keys from Dave to house sit while we were away. I whispered to Dave, "You should have consulted me first." He responded,
"They offered to watch the place last minute. I didn't have time to consult you."
I decided to let it go, figuring their presence had at least deterred burglars. But when I looked around, every room was a mess. Sister-in-law's clothes filled our closet. Items were strewn all over the living room floor. The living room was littered not only on the table, but also on the floor with all kinds of things, including clothes, bags, remote controls, and comic books. It was exhausting to think about clearing up, especially after traveling, but that wasn't even the main issue. Despite our return, mother-in-law and sister-in-law showed no signs of leaving.
It's getting late. You should head home. We're family. Why bother about formalities?
Sister-in-law said, continuing to make themselves at home. I had hoped they'd leave the next day, but even after I returned from work, they were still there. I made it clear they needed to go, but they insisted. We're family, so don't bother about us. I was still doing all the cooking, cleaning, and laundry. So, Dave and I decided we have to ask them to leave when he got home. While cleaning the rooms, I noticed one of my perfumes was missing. It was a limited edition perfume that is not available now and cost over $300, so it was something I used to cherish little by little. In a rush, I asked my mother-in-law, and she had no idea about the perfume. When I confronted my sister-in-law, she said,
Oh, I have that.
And pulled the perfume out of her bag. But almost none of it was left. I had been saving it, and at least 60% was supposed to be left.
It smells good, doesn't it? My friend said so too, so I lent it to them.
She said it so casually without any remorse that I finally lost my temper. Why are you using it without asking? What you're doing is theft. Did anyone teach you not to steal?
Seriously? I just borrowed it. Why are you making such a big deal?
If you only borrowed it, will you give it back?
Fine, but I used some, so half the price should be okay, right?
I don't want money. I want the same item back.
Wow, you're pretty. It's just perfume. I know your brand. It's not that expensive.
Saying that, she checked the price on her phone.
What? Why is this so expensive? Spending $300 on perfume is stupid. If it's so important, lock it up.
She seemed flustered, realizing it was more expensive than she thought. It was important, so I only use it at home. I never thought I'd have a thief as a relative who'd barge in and use my things.
Don't call me a thief for using some perfume.
While we were arguing, Dave came home.
What's all this noise?
Listen, bro, I use a bit of her perfume, and she's calling me a thief.
Leaving the loud sister-in-law in the living room, I explained everything to Dave in the bedroom. I can't take it anymore. Kick mother-in-law and sister-in-law out!
Don't get so mad. I hadn't told you yet, but we're all going to leave here now.
I was stunned by the unexpected news.
Our old house is falling apart. We were debating repairs or moving. Living here saves money, and we have room.
Why didn't you consult me? Don't I contribute to the mortgage?
Mom already started selling the old house. We're all living here. If you don't like it, leave.
I felt my affection for Dave cooling at his unilateral decision.
Understood.
With that, I began packing only the essentials into my suitcase. Dave didn't stop me. Instead, he said,
Running away after a fight is childish.
And returned to the living room. Mother-in-law and sister-in-law smirked as they watched me pack. As soon as I stepped out the door, they locked it behind me. I had no intention of ever going back to that house, so I felt nothing about leaving. I stayed at a hotel and contacted my boss, so I often consult with, to take a few days off. During that break, I found a new place to live and informed my parents that I had moved out because my mother-in-law and sister-in-law had moved in, and Dave told me to leave. I also told my worried parents that I planned to divorce Dave. The only message I received from Dave during this time was an email saying,
You can come back if you repent. They both said they'd forgive you.
When I told Dave over the phone that I wanted a divorce, he first responded,
You're divorcing me over this? Can't you just put up with it a little longer?
But when he realized I was serious, he agreed to the divorce. Things progressed smoothly after that, and the divorce was finalized within a few days. I wanted to end things quickly and sever ties, so I left the house the day without any division of assets. Although we had been married for less than a year, the divorce led to concerned questions from friends and those around me. The old me might have said, It's nothing, and kept quiet. But I was over it and told everyone what had happened. Everyone was sympathetic and supportive, so I'm glad I spoke up. Living alone now, I no longer have to spend time on household chores and can focus more on work. I came up with 3 times the usual number of projects and even offered support to those who were struggling. Though my boss was concerned for me, I was grateful to throw myself into work, as being alone would bring back painful memories and make me wonder if I was also at fault. About 5 months after the divorce, Dave called. I had left most of my belongings at the house, so I thought the call might be about disposing of them and answered. At first, he asked things like,
"What are you doing now? And are you living alone?"
avoiding the main topic. Although Dave is the kind of person who gets grumpy if you don't get to the point, I had to bring it up because time was precious. "Why didn't you call?"
"I want to get back together."
I had no intentions of reconciling, so when I tried to hang up, Dave hurriedly stopped me.
"Wait, there's something else I have to say."
"What? I'm busy, so make it quick."
"Can you lend me some money? I'm having a hard time with the mortgage payments."
Though the mortgage was challenging for Dave alone, it wasn't an amount he couldn't afford on his income. It turned out that Dave thought he'd get a raise soon and would be able to maintain the house even after the divorce. However, the raise didn't happen, and he was told future raises would be difficult, so he decided to quit and find a new job. He thought he'd easily find a job with better conditions, but could only find places offering less pay than his previous job. "I can't lend you any money. Please don't call me again."
"You're still single, right? No one's going to marry an older woman with a divorce history, so you're better off getting back together with me."
Feeling demeaned by his comment, I responded, "No, thank you," and I hung up the phone. I wondered why I ever liked such a person and felt disappointed in my lack of judgment. And so, not just from Dave, but also from mother-in-law and sister-in-law, the calls kept coming. From what I gathered through their calls, they assumed Dave must be earning well since we bought a new house and had a grand wedding reception. They thought I was the one preventing Dave from giving them more money because he himself said he couldn't afford it. So they believed that if I were out of the picture, they could live comfortably. Turns out, Dave's salary was less than they expected, and they panicked, hence the frequent calls. While it's common to think that men earn more than women, I actually make more than Dave. I wanted to block their calls, but Dave knew where I worked. I was afraid they might call or even show up at my workplace, so I answered the phone once in a while. The conversations were always about money. He'd say things like,
"They both are spending too much and drain our savings."
or,
"They both started part-time jobs, but they're still not making ends meet."
I thought if I told them I was also broke, the calls would stop. So one day, as usual, they said,
"We need money for upcoming bills."
I responded, "Actually, I'm leaving my current job. I'm pretty much depleted my savings. I need money more than you do. If you don't believe me, ask my coworkers." After hearing this, Dave said,
"I see,"
and hung up. As planned, the calls from the 3 of them stopped. When I talked about this with a mutual friend, he told me Dave's situation was worse than I'd heard. Turns out, the salary at Dave's new job is less than his previous one, and most of it goes to the mortgage. Not just that, sister-in-law had an affair with her manager and was fired when the manager's wife found out. At first, sister-in-law claimed she didn't know he was married, but it turned out she knew his wife was pregnant. The manager and his wife are divorcing, and it's now public knowledge that sister-in-law caused it. She hasn't found a new job and has lost friends. Dave is paying off loans and barely making ends meet. Mother-in-law keeps complaining that their friends have grandchildren, while her children are single and broke, leading to daily arguments. Our friend said,
Dave thinks he's unattractive since the divorce, but he looks so run down and older than his age. There's no way he's getting any attention.
Because I share the reasons for our divorce, this friend is the only person still speaking to Dave. He tells me everything because he has no one else to talk to. This is the friend who introduced me to Dave. I feel responsible for introducing you two, and besides, hearing about Dave's life is sort of entertaining, he said. He's also making sure Dave doesn't get near me again. As for me, I recently co-founded a web magazine company with some old friends from school. I left my job and used up most of my savings to start this company. Even though running a small business means I have to handle a lot of things on my own, it's exciting to continually take on new challenges. I used to be hesitant about diving into new things, but thanks to various experiences, I've gained the resilience to overcome hurdles. I've also started a relationship with someone I met through work. He's the kind of person who respects my feelings while taking the lead, and meeting him helped me realize that Dave wasn't a leading man, but simply self-centered. After my divorce, I thought for a few months that I couldn't possibly remarry or even date again. But now, I can think positively and want to cherish the happiness in this new chapter of my life.
My mother passed away from an illness when I was in elementary school. Since then, my father had been raising me, but he started bringing a woman around. "Patricia, nice to meet you." She smiled as she said that, and I felt something in her that reminded me of my mother. She seemed much younger than my father, but she was kind to me, and when my father proposed remarriage, I accepted, right away. Now I would have a mother too. For my younger self, this was a joyous occasion. I still remember it, even 30 years later. Back then, I never thought things would turn out like this. My name is Patricia, a 40-year-old homemaker. I live with my husband and daughter. For about a year now, I've been visiting my father in the hospital where he's been admitted. Cancer was found in him, and by that time, it was too late for surgery. He's now in palliative care, but he's outliving the prognosis given by the doctors. When my family and I visit, he's delighted to see his granddaughter's face, and it lifts his spirits. Every time I see my father smile, I remember the past. My mother died, and 3 years later, my father remarried. Looking back, I realized that as a child who lost her mother, I often asked my father, "Can you come to open house? Can you make it to field day? When can we go out next?" Maybe he thought I needed a mother. Fortunately, my grandparents lived nearby, so they looked after me while my father was at work. But when they came to school events, I was laughed at by my friends, and I even told them not to come to school anymore. Everyone else had their mothers, but I was different. Now I should be grateful to my grandparents, but back then, as a child, I couldn't think that way. My father remarried a woman named Jessica, who was 10 years younger than him. She had a smile like my mother's, so I felt comforted by it. I couldn't quite call her mom, but I began to think of Jessica as my mother. Jessica loved me too. But 3 years later, after my brother was born, everything changed. It's natural for her to adore her own son. I might have forgiven that, but Jessica started to be harsh with me. "You're really not a cute child, are you?" After hearing that, something changed inside me. It became hard to be at home, but as a middle schooler, there was nothing I could do. I used to visit my grandparents, but Jessica's snide comments made it hard to go. I didn't want to worry my father or grandparents, so I couldn't even talk to them about it. I just endured. My brother clearly knew he was favored, and he joined Jessica in being mean to me. I left home as soon as I graduated from high school, finally escaping Jessica's snide remarks. More than 10 years later, my father said something surprising. Was it Jessica's fault that I left home, or did I really want to go to college? When I asked my father why he brought this up, he said he overheard Jessica talking to my brother. She had said that it would be a waste to pay for my college, so she made sure I didn't go. And she told me to move out and live on my own. And they were laughing about it, parent and child. My father had begun to notice that things might not be going well between Jessica and me, but he never thought that she and my brother had disliked me so much, and for so long. I told him everything honestly. How things were good at first, how she was kind, how it all changed after my brother was born. How I couldn't tell my father or grandparents, and how I never intended to tell my father, since my brother was important to him too. My father apologized to me. However, I'm already out of the house, and no longer a child. There's no particular problem even if I'm estranged from my mother-in-law. And so, time passed. When I went to visit my father, I sometimes ran into Jessica and my brother. Something about Jessica seemed off. I overheard her whispering with my brother. How long will it last? How much inheritance is there? I couldn't believe they were talking about such things in the hospital. She seems to visit often, perhaps to appear devoted, but the other day she took all the snacks brought as gifts and left right away. Unbelievable. My father sighs at Jessica and my brother's behavior. He told me he wanted to leave me more inheritance and said he would consult a lawyer. I was surprised at first, but apparently since I left home, my father had been treated with disrespect. I wish he had told me sooner, but he didn't want to worry me, he said. Parents and children think alike, don't they? My father's smile as he said this was memorable. One day when I went to visit, my father was out for a test, so I decided to take his laundry home. Jessica and my brother came in. Oh, here again? Trying to show how much you love Dad to get more inheritance, huh? Jessica said, laughing. I had a bad feeling, so I said I was going to the restroom, left my things, and exited the room. When I returned about 10 minutes later, Jessica was hurriedly hiding something. I just greeted her and left. A month later, my father passed away suddenly. Time flew by with the wake and funeral. Once everything was over, I went back to my parents' house to sort out my father's belongings. He had asked me to do so while he was alive. Then Jessica came. Don't take anything valuable. I was stunned by her words. Then she and my brother brought an envelope. Oh yes, about the inheritance? He said he's not leaving anything for you. What? I didn't understand. Inside the envelope was a paper marked as a will. My daughter, who quickly abandoned her parents' house, has no intention of leaving an inheritance. Instead, I'll leave it to my devoted wife and son, Jessica said. There's no way my father would say that. But indeed, in my father's handwriting, the will stated that the inheritance would go to his wife and son. Aren't wills supposed to be unsealed, only in the presence of a lawyer? I argued with my limited knowledge, and she said this was a copy, and the official document was with the lawyer. Jessica didn't stop. I'm relieved to have had a hard-working husband. Now my life is secure. I can live a wealthy life with my only son. My brother was smirking along with her. The disappointing daughter must take after her mother, marrying a man with no real income. How pitiful. I was furious at those words. What? What do you know about my mother? And my husband is a much better person than you, and he earns enough to allow me to be a homemaker. I could forgive her talking about me, but I was enraged when she spoke about my mother and husband. However, Jessica was unfazed. Well, that doesn't matter. Anyway, I've got the inheritance. Just take the worthless things as keepsakes. Now please, leave, stranger. I never thought she could be this kind of person. All she talked about was inheritance and money. I didn't want anything more to do with her. Understood. Jessica smirked at my words and brought out a large travel bag. Well, we're going on a 3-week vacation. Now that we have the inheritance, we'll have a blast. I was amazed that she could do such a thing right after her husband's death. I left my parents' house, speechless and wondering why my father never divorced such a person. The next day, a man claiming to be a lawyer appeared at my door. He had known my father for a long time and smiled nostalgically at me. That's when I learned a shocking truth. Jessica and my brother had gone on vacation. Apparently, they wouldn't be back for 3 weeks. During that time, I went to my parents' house to sort things out and requested the house be demolished. My father had arranged everything before his death, and the demolition went smoothly. On the day Jessica and my brother returned from vacation, I ambushed them with a lawyer at the site where my parents' house once stood. They screamed. What is this? What's going on? I had the house demolished. Everything that wasn't mine or my father's is stored in a self-storage unit. What are you talking about? This is our house. How dare you demolish it without permission? Compensate us, right now. Jessica yelled at me, but I calmly replied, this house and land are mine, so I can do what I want. Besides, my father told me to demolish it. Jessica, furious, showed me the will from earlier. Look at this will! It says it's ours! I was amazed at how important the inheritance was to her, that she took the will on vacation. That will is a fake, I said, and Jessica was furious. That's impossible! Look! The date and name are written here! I was astonished at her desperation and retorted, My father had entrusted the real will to a lawyer, and he had arranged for the inheritance. It states that only part of the savings goes to you two, while the house, land, and other savings go to me. Also, my father had arranged for the demolition of this old house, saying it would be better to sell the land. My father, realizing that Jessica and my brother were only interested in the inheritance, had consulted a lawyer after being hospitalized. Every time Jessica visited the hospital room, she pressured him to write a will, leaving the inheritance only to them. She even said the hospital fees were a waste and that he should die soon. It seems that even my father was furious about this, but if he divorced now, he'd have to divide the property. He thought that if he had to leave his assets to such a wife, he couldn't divorce. Over and over, he was told about the will, and my father said, "I wrote the will in the presence of a lawyer. This is a copy of it," and handed it to Jessica. That seems to be the paper from earlier. It seems that Jessica and my brother are to receive a few $1,000s each, but according to the lawyer, they were together as husband and wife, and he's her real son. There's no love, but there's compassion, so he decided to leave that much. Jessica and my brother were stunned, but I spoke even harsher words. "You're lucky to even get a few $1,000s, but you destroyed the will, didn't you? In that case, you lose all rights to inherit." Then Jessica was visibly shaken. "What are you talking about? That's not true." At that point, I played the voice recorder. It was the voice recorder I had hidden in my belongings when I said I was going to the bathroom, after finding my father was out for a test when I entered his hospital room. The conversation between Jessica and my brother, who came in later, was perfectly recorded. It included the fact that my father was angry at Jessica's attitude and wrote a will leaving everything to me, and that they had destroyed it. The day before, Jessica and my brother had visited, but my father was furious at their usual attitude. In that flow, he called a lawyer to write a will leaving all his inheritance to me, and he had kept the written will. That day, Jessica and my brother came to the hospital room, probably to get forgiveness from my father. But unluckily, it was me in the hospital room, not my father. However, they found the will while I was away and tore it up. With this, the will is invalid. Now all we have to do is make him rewrite it to leave all the inheritance to us. Though it's only a voice, I can picture them grinning. What they hid in a hurry when I returned was the torn up will. "You really are a nasty girl." I hear the same line after decades, but I'm not a child anymore. I laughed at that. "I don't care. It was my childhood home too, but I'd rather lose it than let you two live there." Then my brother interrupts the conversation. "Hey, Mom, what about the $10,000 you spent on the trip?" Hearing this, Jessica is visibly shaken. Apparently, she thought my father's inheritance was coming and had been spending quite lavishly. I wonder how one can spend $10,000 in just 3 weeks. Jessica suddenly changes her attitude and turns to me for help. "Patricia, we're family, aren't we? You'll share a little with us, right?" "What? What are you thinking? I don't consider you family. Besides, your son is in the prime of his career, so he can pay that amount right away, can't he? Since he's good enough to be little someone's husband, he'll surely earn it for you, won't he?" I left Jessica and my brother, who were in a state of confusion, and walked away from the scene. Later, I found out that my brother had apparently quit the company he used to work for. He made a mistake at work and didn't like being guided by his boss, so he predicted that he could live without working, now that he had my father's inheritance. And he had been wandering around, without even looking for a new job. It seems he had a hard time finding a place to live, but somehow he rented an old apartment, and the two of them started part-time jobs. I thought it was strange for someone in the prime of their career, almost 30, to be working a part-time job, but he probably couldn't find a new position. Jessica had always been a housewife, so she seems to be struggling with work, but this is the retribution for expecting my father's inheritance. The land where my father's house once stood is now being used as a parking lot, serving the residents. My father would surely be pleased. I'm truly glad I was able to protect my father's legacy.
My name is Amelia and I'm 49. I've worked for many years as an office clerk at a local factory. Until recently, I live with my husband Theodore, my mother-in-law Harriet, and our only daughter Kyrie in my husband's family home. We were married for 28 years. It feels like such a long time to me, but just a few days ago, I put an end to that marriage. Yes, I got a divorce. It's what they call a late life divorce. Some people were shocked, while others just said it was inevitable. My married life began when I met my husband at the age of 20. Back then, I just graduated from commercial high school in our town and started my job as an accounting clerk at the same factory where I still work. My father's friend introduced me to Theodore.
He's a young relative of ours. How about meeting him? He works at the city hall.
My mom said, "A government job? That's a great opportunity for you. Please meet him." She was all for it. At our first meeting, Theodore seemed very earnest and a bit nervous.
"Nice to meet you. I'm Theodore."
He didn't talk much, maybe because he was nervous. "What do you do at the city hall? Any hobbies?" He answered all my questions politely.
"I work at the citizens counter in the city hall. I love fishing, and I often go to the mountains with my friends during my days off."
It felt like I was interviewing him. But I thought such an earnest guy would make a good family man. Eventually, Theodore was the one who asked me out. Throughout our dating period, he remained quiet, but slowly began sharing more about his love for fishing. I thought he was opening up to me bit by bit, and a year later, we got married. Since he was an only child, I moved into his family home after our wedding. I didn't know much about my mother-in-law as we didn't meet often during our courtship. I thought she might be as earnest as Theodore, but boy, was I wrong. She was a handful. The day I entered their house, she said to me directly, "Now that you're married, serve me and Theodore properly. Don't you dare talk back." Her sudden arrogance took me by surprise, but all I could reply was, I hope we get along well." My life changed drastically the next day. Woken up at 4 a.m., I cleaned the house and prepared breakfast in Theodore's lunchbox. I wasn't allowed to sit and eat. Harriet instructed me to eat standing in the kitchen, and of course, I was the one to clean up afterward. What surprised me more was Harriet helping Theodore get ready in the morning. She woke him up, brought him warm water to wash his face, and even laid out the clothes for him to wear. She'd smile contently when she saw him dressed in the clothes she chose, and he looked as if it was the most normal thing in the world. The last straw for me was seeing her put on his shoes for him as he left for work. I never thought I'd have to deal with such extremes, but my mother-in-law, with clear hostility, told me, "I'll take care of my son, you stay away." My husband seemed to expect his mother to be overly involved and never even thanked her. I wondered, don't you appreciate what your mom does? But more shockingly was her behavior. I realized our future wasn't going to be easy. Moreover, my husband barely paid attention to me. Sure, he had a demanding job, but on weekends, he always prioritized his hobbies. "How about we go shopping together once in a while?" Even when I suggested, he would reply,
"I'd rather go fishing. You can go alone."
"I want to spend time with you."
"There's no need for that."
That's how he dismissed me. The only times he'd join me were for events like relatives' weddings or funerals. One day I asked him, "Why did you marry me?" He said,
"Family was pressuring me since I was getting older. Finding someone on my own was a hassle, and you were introduced at the right time, so I just married you."
Shocked, I asked, "Didn't you love me?"
"I neither loved nor disliked you."
His words shattered me, and I broke down crying. And my troubles were far from over. My mother-in-law cherished her son, but was very harsh on me. "You're just not cut out to be a good wife." That was her go-to phrase. Once I came home late from work and quickly made dinner. She exclaimed, "Don't serve this half-baked meal to my son," and tossed it straight into the trash. Every meal had some issue, too salty or not salty enough. She'd only let me pack freshly made food in my husband's lunch. Any pre-made dishes, tossed out. She'd find faults in my cleaning or laundry too. She'd ask me to polish the entrance floor daily. After polishing, she'd step on it with muddy shoes and complain it was still dirty. When I did laundry, she'd comment, "This softener smells bad, rewash it," and have me redo it. But that wasn't the worst of it, because it fits only in the home. The real trouble was that she'd lied. It's hypocrisy. She'd tell our neighbors and relatives all sorts of made-up stories about me, how I neglected housework, mistreat her son, and bully her daily. She'd narrate these lies as if they were the truth, even shedding tears for effect. "My daughter-in-law is..." So everyone believed her. "You should be more considerate of your mother-in-law."
"She did raise your husband, after all."
How many times was I lectured by neighbors and relatives? I considered divorce, but then I got pregnant. Maybe once the baby's here, he'll change. Even if he doesn't care about me, he'll adore our child. Maybe the baby will bridge the gap between me and my mother-in-law. At least that's what I hoped, but I was wrong. Both of them wanted a boy. They were there at the hospital when I gave birth, but when they heard the baby's gender, they didn't even look at the baby's face.
"What, a girl?"
I still remember my husband's words like it was just yesterday. Even my mother-in-law lamented, "Not a girl." Her face fell, sighing deeply. We named our daughter Kyrie, a name I came up with. The two of them had only thought of boy names. My husband had always dreamt of taking his son fishing, and my mother-in-law longed for a grandson who looked just like him, so they hardly paid any attention to our daughter. But I believed that over time they would come to adore her as feelings grew. While my husband did fulfill his responsibilities as a father by providing for Kyrie's education and attending important events, he did so out of social obligation, not genuine affection. He wasn't abusive, but their relationship lacked warmth. My mother-in-law was no different. As Kyrie grew older, she distanced herself from both of them. I often thought of divorcing him, but he did provide the basic necessities as a father. I felt that having a father figure might be beneficial if something happened in the future that I couldn't handle alone. And his income was higher than mine. Raising Kyrie would need money. With that in mind, I couldn't easily decide to divorce him. By the time Kyrie reached high school, she seemed to understand my predicament, saying, "You can divorce Dad. I can get a part-time job." But even if I divorced, my parents were gone, and going back to my brother's house would just be a burden. Every day, I juggled house chores, work, and taking care of Kyrie. But the year Kyrie became a working adult, an event put an end to our life's monotony. It all began with my mother-in-law's hospitalization. On a cold winter day, during her usual morning walk, she slipped on an icy path. Unable to move, a newspaper delivery person found her and called an ambulance. Both my husband and I took time off work and rushed to the hospital. The doctor informed us, "Given her age, her bones and muscles have weakened. Even if she recovers, she might not regain full mobility." To which my husband replied indifferently, "Oh, okay," adding, "Please tell my wife the rest," shirking responsibility. He didn't even visit her. Instead, he indulged in his favorite pastime, fishing. After work, I visited her daily, bringing laundry and attending to her needs. Yet she complained to the nurse, "My daughter-in-law is so inconsiderate." I was complaining to the nurse who was in charge. The nurses, trying to comfort her, said, "She visits every day. You're lucky to have such a caring daughter-in-law." But my mother-in-law continued, "She only pretends to be good. She's always been so cruel to me." Moreover, she blamed me for her son's absence, exclaiming, "It's because of the nonsense you filled his head with that he doesn't visit. What a horrid daughter-in-law." "That's how you insulted me?" I couldn't tell her the truth about his fishing, so I just mumbled, "He's been really busy." True to the doctor's predictions, her fracture healed slowly. There was an outbreak of a severe flu in the city, and even the hospital started showing signs of its spread. During this time, she contracted the flu and developed a high fever. Despite her condition, my husband remained indifferent. "I can't believe you," I exclaimed. "Your own mother is in a dangerous situation and you want to go fishing? Show some concern for her." But my husband replied, "I told you, I'm leaving it up to you." And he didn't change his mind about going fishing. I felt a deep disdain for him, and after all the love and care he received from his mother, how could he be so cold-hearted? Then an event occurred that made me lose all patience with him. One weekend morning, as he was preparing to go fishing again, I stopped him. "You're visiting your mother in the hospital today. She's always taken such good care of you. At least show her your face." I confronted him at the entrance, trying to prevent him from leaving, but with a look of deep annoyance he said, "All those things she did for me, she did them on her own. I never asked for any of it." I was left speechless. I couldn't believe what he had just said. He glanced at my shocked expression and said, "My fishing buddies are waiting. I won't be back until the day after tomorrow." With that, he left. Our daughter, who had witnessed everything, said, "Dad's so heartless." She muttered this with clear disdain. That night, I received a call from the hospital saying that my mother-in-law was in critical condition. I rushed over immediately. She had been moved to the ICU and was wearing an oxygen mask. Apparently, she had developed pneumonia, the doctor told me. "Tonight might be crucial." Of course, I tried to contact my husband immediately, but he ignored my texts and calls and didn't respond to my emails. I was disgusted with him. Why should I have to run around for a woman who had always been treated so poorly by her own son? Why should I be the one by her side during her last moments? Shouldn't her own son, my husband, be the one doing this? After all, she had never done anything for me. Even knowing that his mother was critically ill, he prioritized his own fun. Why should I exhaust myself for these people? I'd had enough. These thoughts crossed my mind. "I see, then I'll be leaving." "Huh?" I told the doctor, who looked at me in surprise. "It's better if her son is here. I'm going home." I left the hospital in a hurry. When I got home, my worried daughter was waiting. "How is she?" she asked. It seems she might pass away tonight, but honestly, I don't want to be the one taking care of her, so I came back, I replied. She nodded, asking, what will we do next? We're going to get divorced. You're old enough now. That sounds good. I've been thinking of living alone. I've always been worried about you. Thank you. The next morning, we left our home early. It might be uncomfortable, but we decided to go back to my childhood home. When we arrived and told my brother and his wife what happened, they were furious that I hadn't said anything sooner. A few days later, I had a flood of missed calls and text messages from my husband. I ignored them all, but eventually reached out.
What the hell are you doing?
Well,
you left when you knew my mother was critical. Because of you, I had to rush back from my trip.
You should have. She's your mother, after all. It's your responsibility.
I expected you to take care of her.
I never said I understood. And after all the care she received, don't you think it's time to give back a little? I spoke with a sharp tone. My husband fell silent, but I pressed on. So, how's your mother doing now?
She's stable, but she's weak, and they said she won't be able to move like before.
So, are we putting her in a care facility?
That's gonna cost a lot. Why don't you just take care of her?
I won't.
Excuse me?
My husband sounded puzzled by my response. I said I won't. I don't want to be with someone who's indifferent when others are in need, and I certainly don't want to care for a mother-in-law who constantly belittles and lies about me.
So, what? You're saying you want a divorce?
Yes, I do. Even Kyrie agrees with me.
She's okay with abandoning her grandmother and father?
Excuse me? You've always been indifferent to Kyrie. Now you're saying she's the one abandoning? Don't be ridiculous. My husband fell silent again, but quickly retorted,
But you're just a clerk at a small-town factory, right? How will you manage without me?
He mocked my job, using finances as leverage. Oh, I'll be fine. I earn as much as you do.
You're lying.
I'm not. How long do you think I've been at that company? I'm in a senior management position and soon I'll be on the board. Plus, Kyrie's working now. I've always worked at that factory since graduating, juggling household chores and raising Kyrie. There were times I wanted to quit because of the physical strain, but I couldn't afford to lose the income. I worked hard with that mindset. Over the years, the company grew from a small-town factory to one of the largest in the region, and I climbed the ranks to a senior position. Now I'm able to take a seat on the board. But it's no surprise my indifferent husband didn't know. All he cared about was fishing. I've made up my mind to divorce you. From now on, let's communicate through our lawyers.
Hold on, we're married, aren't we? Let's talk this out.
I won't wait. The situation made it clear to me how self-centered you are. Goodbye. Ignoring my husband's pleas, I hung up the phone. After that, I proceeded with the divorce through my lawyer. He initially resisted, saying, a divorce would look bad. We have my mother's care to think about. But I was adamant. Eventually, he reluctantly signed the divorce papers. Of course, I made sure to get a fair share of the compensation and assets. My ex-husband ended up taking care of his mother at home. He wanted to place her in a care facility, but she insisted on being cared for by her son, so he had no choice but to provide home care. However, given his history of indifference, it's no surprise he struggled with the demands of caregiving. Their relationship deteriorated with constant arguments. I heard they fight every day. Just the other day, as I passed their house, I heard them shouting at each other. A neighbor mentioned, with a wry smile, that their arguments often last till late at night. My daughter Kyrie started living on her own, and I rented an apartment near my workplace. The apartment allows pets, so I recently got a turtle. Watching its leisurely pace makes me feel like the hectic pace of my life has slowed down. I want to spend time for myself now and live each day with enthusiasm.